fazendo a tradução. Dan, good morning, my friend.
Good morning,
Thank you
Phil.
so much to have you here. We are very, very excited to have this opportunity to learn from you. Just introducing a little bit about you for our Brazilian friends. Dan is a very good coach at MBSC. A lot of years of experience. How many years working for MBSC?
This will be my 8th summer.
8th summer, very good. Almost 10 years, huh?
Yep.
And Dan had a very good experience in China. He was there for almost 16 months, working with some Olympic athletes, some different Olympic sports. He was there applying MBSC philosophies, MBSC ideas, and CFSC programs, of course. And this presentation I saw him doing during the winter seminar, MBSC winter seminar, was amazing. Something that every coach have to know about. How can you use some strategies to change clients' behavior to active success? Dan, the mic is yours. Thank you so much, buddy.
All right. Thank you, Phil. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Like Felix said, my name is Dan McGinley. I'm a coach at Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning and also a educator and a coach with the Certified Functional Strength Coach. And this presentation is called The Elephant in the Room, Coaching Behavior Change. And I really love talking about behavior change because it directly applies to everything that we do from a training standpoint. It applies to nutrition, rehab, training, pretty much everything underneath the coaching umbrella. And part of the reason that I got interested in this subject was that one of the big challenges that I face in my day-to-day job as coaching is getting my athletes and my clients to do the things that they need to do outside of the weight room in order to achieve the type of success and the type of change that they're looking for. And I emphasize outside the weight room because if you have taken a CFSE course and you follow the CFSE methods, I'm pretty confident that you do a really good job in the weight room, okay, in the training setting. But we all know that so much of the results that our athletes and our clients see is going to be determined by what they do in the 23 hours when they're not with us. So what I want to do today is introduce you to this framework and this system that I've learned and that I've been using to influence my athletes and my clients' behaviors outside of the weight room in those other 23 hours of the day in order to get the best results. And first off, I want to say a huge thank you to our entire CFSC Brazil team. These guys do an amazing job. They've been super helpful to me personally and also to our entire MBSC staff. A special thanks to my friend Felix and to Bruno for doing all the translating. Again, these guys do an amazing job. So this is what the next 40 minutes or so of today's presentation are going to look like. I want to start out by introducing you to the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. This was a really influential book to me and got me started thinking about behavior change. After that, we're going to talk about the framework for coaching behavior change that's laid out in the book. And then finally, we're going to apply that framework and I'll show you how to use it with your own athletes and clients using one of my clients, Pat, as an example. And what you see up on the right-hand side of the screen here are some of the best resources that I have found on this topic of behavior change. Okay, again, the book Switch right at the top there, which we're going to talk a lot about. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Influence by Robert Cialdini. Atomic Habits by James Clear. And The Power of Less by Leo Babauta. These are all really good books. And if people are looking for more information on this topic after this presentation, I highly encourage you to check some of these out. So why is this important, and why should any of us care about coaching behavior change? It's important to understand that anyone that comes to train with you, anyone that joins your gym, hires you as a coach, whether it's an athlete or a client, is ultimately trying to change something. Okay, it might be how much they weigh, it might be how strong they are or how they perform in their sport, it might be how much pain they're in, right? But no matter what they're trying to change, it's all going to come back to their behavior. And again, the things that they do not only inside the weight room with us, but outside on their own. It's also important to look at what's important to us as coaches, right? We all want success, and success is going to mean different things to different people, right? We all have different definition of success, but the majority of us get into this field because we want to help people and we want to make a difference. And learning to, again, impact people's behavior and have a greater influence outside of the weight room is going to allow us to have a much greater impact on our athletes and our clients' lives and make a much bigger difference in the type of change they're trying to make. Okay. And that's going to ultimately lead to us being more fulfilled in our roles as coaches, right? Again, if we can have a bigger impact in people's lives and make a bigger difference, that's going to be exciting to wake up every day and go into the gym and coach. Okay. And it's also going to lead to more money, which is important to everybody. It's important to you. It's important to me. Having a greater impact and getting people better results is ultimately going to lead to you having more athletes and more clients wanting to train with you, and people being willing to paying a higher price in order to work with you. So this book, Switch, by Chip and Dan Heath, the subtitle is How to Change Things When Change is Hard. Again, this was a huge light bulb moment for me reading this book. And it's not actually directly a coaching book, but everything in it can really be applied directly to what we do on a day-to-day basis. The thesis, or the main point of the book, is that all change is ultimately behavior change. And that means that to achieve a different result requires a different behavior, right? And that's pretty obvious. I think we all know that. We can't just act the same. If we act the same way, we're going to get the same result, okay? But that's much easier said than done. And we know that that's much easier said than done if you've ever planned on doing something and didn't follow through, okay? If you've ever planned on going to the gym and decided to sit home on the couch instead, or if you've ever hit the snooze alarm, or if you've ever eaten too much or drank too much, okay? So we know that change is difficult, but why is change so difficult? Well, it's important to understand that our brains are operating with two independent systems at all times. Okay, system one is known as our rational brain. This is the side of our brain that's our conscious thoughts. It works very slow and deliberate, and it requires a lot of effort and a lot of energy in order to produce results. System two is known as our emotional brain. That's the side of our brain that's unconscious. It works very fast and automatic, and it requires very little effort. Okay, it basically runs in the background throughout the entire day. Now, in a perfect world, in a perfect situation, these two systems of our brain would work together. Okay, so our rational brain would think up of a goal or a game plan, and then our emotional brain would take over and unconsciously lead us towards executing on that game plan. But if that were the case, change would be very easy, right? And we would be able to follow through with all of our goals and all of our ideas. In reality, these two systems are constantly battling one another. And it's like they're in a tug of war with each other. And what we see is that it creates a big divide between knowing what the right thing to do is and having that knowledge and that information, and actually being able to go and execute and do it. Our brains are wired for efficiency, okay? Our default setting as human beings is homeostasis. And because of that, we're always trying to work back towards homeostasis no matter what we do. So 95% of our behaviors are going to be controlled by our emotional brain, that emotional side. That's our unconscious. Okay, that's what's really in control of the majority of our behaviors. And when we learn something new, when we learn a new skill or a new habit, we have to work very hard at that. And that's controlled by our rational brain. And our rational brain likes to figure out something one time. And after it figures it out, the rest of the time, we're going to rely on our emotional brain to follow that same pattern and that same routine. And that's why we continuously do the same things over and over again. Our body is trying to preserve energy and go back to homeostasis. And that's why change is so costly, right? It requires a lot of energy, both mentally and physically from ourselves. A really good example of this is picture that you just started a brand new job, okay? And it's your first day of work and you have to drive to the new job and you want to make sure that you get there on time. On that drive to work, you'd be very conscious and very aware of where you were going. You'd pay attention to all the street signs and all the lights, and you'd be very consciously aware of what was going on. Okay, but after a few months of working there, that drive to work becomes very routine, right? And it gets to the point where you can drive to work and not think, you can be completely distracted thinking about 1,000 different things. You show up to work and you're not even sure how you got there. Okay, that's when our brain switches again from a rational side where it's learning something for the very first time to our emotional side where it's automatic and follows the same routine and the same pattern. So the psychologist Jonathan Haidt has a great analogy to set up this framework for coaching behavior change. He uses the analogy of the rider and the elephant. So the rational side of our brain, he describes as a tiny little human rider, while our emotional brain is like this big giant elephant. And the most important thing to notice about this analogy here is the scale difference. Okay, again, we have this tiny little human rider on top, and we have this huge giant beast of an elephant that's doing most of the work. Okay, again, it's pretty clear from this picture that if these two were to get into a battle or a tug of war with each other, the elephant is going to win every single time. Okay, again, and that helps us picture that the emotional brain, the part that's responsible for 95% of our behaviors, that's what's really in control here. Now, there's also a third part of this framework that we need to consider, and that's our environment. Okay, the environment is the path. So you can picture in this analogy with the rider and the elephant, even if the rider and elephant are going forward at a steady pace and they're working towards whatever goal they're going towards, if their path that they're walking on is filled with trees and big, huge rocks and ditches, it's going to be very difficult for them to reach their destination. Okay, and that's how we can picture the environments that our behavior change is going to occur in. So now let's look at breaking down this analogy in a little bit more detail and looking at each component, starting with directing the rider. Okay, again, the rider is our rational brain. This is our conscious decisions that require a lot of energy. The strengths of the rational brain are things like goal setting, planning, and organizing. A good example here is every January 1st, millions of people sit down and make New Year's resolutions, right? And they plan out all the ways throughout the new year that we're going to change, right? It might be, I'm going to start exercising more. I'm going to start eating better. I'm going to get more sleep, right? That's our rational brain doing all that work. The goal when working with the rational side of the brain is to create clarity, all right? We want to tell it exactly where to go and what to do. Again, the rational brain requires a lot of energy. So if we can make it as clear as possible, that's going to help spare some of the energy that it has to use. So how do we make it as clear as possible? We script the critical moves and we find bright spots. Okay, scripting the critical moves, I like to use the analogy here of using a GPS before you make a road trip. Okay, so again, picture that scenario before when we were driving to work for the very first time, and our brain's working really hard, paying attention to all the street signs, all the turns. If we had a GPS and we could just plug in the direction, it'd be that much easier. Okay, the GPS would tell us exactly where to turn, exactly what routes to take. Okay, an example of this in a client situation is, let's say you have a client who's trying to eat healthier, right? That's their goal. And they tell you that they're able to eat healthy throughout the entire day. But as soon as they get home from work every single day, the wheels fall off the bus and they eat a whole bunch of junk food before dinner's ready. We could sit down with that client and script out the exact moves we want to do between them getting home from work and them eating dinner. So for example, it might be telling that client, as soon as you get home from work, you're going to leave your running shoes right next to the front door. And as soon as you walk in the front door, you're going to take off your work shoes, you're going to put on your running shoes, and you're going to take a walk around the neighborhood until dinner's ready. Okay? Again, we're going to tell that client exactly where to go and exactly what to do during their critical moments throughout the day. Okay, next we have find bright spots. Finding bright spots means we emphasize what's already working in this client's life or in this athlete's life. Again, when we're thinking about changing something, the natural inclination is to look at everything that's going wrong and everything that we want to fix. Okay, but finding bright spots takes the opposite approach. Let's figure out what this client is already doing well, and let's see how we can do more of that behavior and get them to increase the frequency of that. Okay, again, this is going to spare their riders energy because they don't need to learn a new behavior. They just simply need to repeat more of a behavior that they're already doing. Next, we have motivate the elephant. Okay, again, the elephant is the analogy for the emotional side of our brain. This is the side that's responsible for giving us cravings and running on autopilot. The goal when working to motivate the elephant is to create desire. Okay, we want to make whatever type of change there is very desirable. How do we do that? We shrink the change, we build an identity and a mindset, and we create small wins. Okay, shrinking the change means that we limit the perceived investment we're asking clients to make. Okay, an example here is, let's say you have an athlete who is recovering from ACL surgery, and her goal is to get back to training with her team. ACL surgery and ACL rehab can take a very long time. That's a long process. And it can also be a very sort of daunting and overwhelming thing to think about, especially for young athletes. There's a lot of steps that they need to take in order to get back to playing their sport. So in order to make the change seem more manageable, we're going to shrink that down and break it into smaller pieces. So for this athlete, maybe we focus first on, let's see how consistent you can be with your rehab. Okay, and we're gonna get a big calendar, and every single day that you consecutively show up to the gym and do your rehab work, we're gonna put a big green check mark on the calendar. Okay, this is going to allow that athlete to focus on what's in her immediate control, and again, shrink the change down into a smaller segment. This is also important because each action that she takes, so each day that she shows up to the gym and does her rehab work, is going to help to build an identity for her. All right, each action she takes, each positive action that's going to help towards her behavior change, is building an identity. So when trying to make a behavior change, we want to focus on the process of becoming something rather than just simply getting a result. Okay, this is really a mind shift change that makes a big impact on the people we're coaching, right? Because if we can have them focus on becoming something different on the way to their behavior change, that's going to allow them to have more sustainable change, right? Because anyone can get a result one time. Anyone can lose a bunch of weight once or achieve some sort of goal one time, right? But if they don't become someone different during that process, it's very likely that they're going to slide back to their previous behaviors that had them looking for that change in the first place. Okay, so again, going back to that athlete who's rehabbing from ACL injury, every action that she takes towards becoming a healthier athlete and getting back onto the field is a vote. All right, and we don't need her to be perfect every single time. Just like an election, we just need a majority vote. Okay, we need her actions to consistently build towards that identity of her becoming a healthy athlete, somebody who works hard, is consistent, and takes care of her body. Movement is Medicine has a great article titled Highlight the Positive. And in the article, they talk about, as human beings, we all have a negativity bias. And this negativity bias that we have is really a survival mechanism that we're ingrained with as human beings. And it programs into our mind to remember negative situations 3 times more likely than a positive situation. Okay, so, and again, that's to help us survive. It's to help us avoid danger. This is going to be especially highlighted in an athlete who's in pain, or an athlete, again, who's rehabbing from some sort of injury, right? They've already experienced the negative situation, so they're going to be very aware and very alert and on guard for any other negative things that happen. So in the article, they talk about counteracting this negativity bias by using a 3-to-1 positive to negative ratio with all of our athletes and with our clients. So again, going back to the example of our client that's rehabbing from ACL injury, right? She's going to be looking for and very aware of any negative things that happen throughout her rehab and her training process. So we may do things like, again, check the calendar for every day that's used consistent. That's one positive. Maybe we can make an Instagram post and tag her in it for every time she experiences a big milestone throughout her rehab, right? And then we can take lots of video of her throughout her training to be able to show her visual feedback, like, hey, this is how you're progressing. Look at all the positive steps you're taking. Okay, this is going to be, again, very important in building small wins for our athletes and our clients along the way. And finally, we have shaping the path. Okay, again, the path is the environment for change. The environment is critical because, as Chip Peat says in the book, when the environment changes, our behavior changes. And again, this is pretty obvious. We all know that we act differently at a party on Saturday night than we do at church on Sunday morning, right? And part of that is because it's such a different environment. So when working to shape the path, our goal is to make it convenient. How do we make it convenient? We can tweak the environment and we can build positive habits. Okay, tweaking the environment is all about creating a situation where it's as easy as possible for our athlete or our client to do the type of behaviors that are going to help lead towards their change, while making it as inconvenient as possible for them to do behaviors that are going to lead away from their change or take them further down the path they don't want to go. An example of this is, let's say you have a client whose goal is to drink more water throughout the day, right? They want to stay better hydrated. Well, you could shape their path and tweak their environment by leaving bottles of water throughout their path all along their day. Okay, so maybe that client has a habit already of waking up every morning and making a pot of coffee. Well, let's say we have them leave a bottle of water right next to that pot of coffee. And we tell them, okay, as soon as you wake up and you hit start on the coffee machine, your goal is to drink an entire bottle of water before you had your first cup of coffee, right? Once that's a habit, we further make it convenient for them to drink more water by placing bottles of water. Maybe we leave a bottle of water for them at their work desk, right? So all day they're sitting at their desk working and they can see the bottle of water. So that, again, it's going to make it very easy and convenient for them to drink more. Okay, and then maybe from there we keep a bottle of water for them at the gym, right? And every time they come in to train with us, we tell them, all right, again, your goal is to finish that bottle of water before our training session's over. These are all really important, again, because they start to build positive habits. So again, once somebody does something once, that's the part that's controlled by their rational brain. But as it becomes habitual, it's going to be controlled by our emotional brain, and it's going to become an automatic behavior. That's really important because, again, change is very costly and it requires a lot of effort. So if we can make positive habits habitual, our clients or athletes are going to be able to do those things for free without having to tax their willpower, and it's going to be that much easier to make their change. I love this study about the environment dictating our behavior. And this was a study done at Mass General Hospital in Boston. And what they did was they looked at if rearranging where drinks were located in the cafeteria could change how what type of drinks people bought. And what you see up on the right-hand side of the screen here is how the cafeteria was laid out initially. So you see that each of those small black squares were coolers filled with water, while each of the gray squares were filled with soda and other things. And what they did was go into the cafeteria, and again, they just rearranged the layout. So again, you can see they added more spots where water was available. So each of those black squares were coolers. Each of those small black circles were baskets placed next to food stations with water in them. Okay, and by simply adding more stations and rearranging the layout, they decreased soda sales by 11.4%, while increasing bottled water sales by 25.8% in just a couple of weeks. Now, they also did a very similar study with food, okay? And this time they tracked the food purchases of over 5,000 employees over 2 years. And again, they went into the cafeteria here. They didn't tell anyone what they were doing, but they simply put stickers on all the food. A green sticker was placed on foods that were the healthiest. A yellow sticker was placed on foods that were less healthy, and red stickers were placed on the least healthy food items. And what they found was that over 2 years tracking these employees, the purchases of food with the red label on them, the unhealthiest foods, decreased by 20%, while foods with the green sticker on them, the healthiest items, increased by 12%. And what I love about both of these studies is that the people in these studies were very well-educated, highly successful people. We're talking about doctors, surgeons, nurses, right? These people knew what healthy food was. They knew that drinking water was better for them than drinking soda. But it wasn't until people went in and rearranged their environment and made it completely obvious by putting giant stickers on the food that they were able to change their behavior. So again, it goes to show that how much the environment impacts even the smartest person's decisions. So now that we've gone through that switch framework, let's look at the entire thing in its whole. Okay, first, we're going to work to direct the rider. Again, the rider is the analogy for our rational brain. The goal when working to direct the rider is to create clarity. We do that by telling it where to go and what to do and giving it specific instructions. Next, we have motivate the elephant. The elephant is the analogy for our emotional brain. The goal when working with the emotional brain is to create desire. Okay, and we do that by making the change small and more sequential, breaking it down into manageable tasks. And finally, we have shape the path. The path is the environment, is the analogy for the environment in which the change occurs. The goal when working to shape the path is to make it as easy as possible. And we do that by making it convenient and building habits. It's critical to understand that we need all three components of this framework in order to have a sustainable change that's going to last a long time. So now that we've talked about the framework for behavior change, let's put it to use. And I'm going to show you how I used it to help one of my own clients named Pat. Okay, Pat has been in an adult group at NBSC for over 2 years now. And on the next slide, we're going to watch a short 30-second video clip of Pat introducing himself. And while he's up on the screen, I want you to imagine that he's one of your clients that you're meeting him for the very first time, because you're going to take him through this entire process of behavior change.
Dan, I think he's not having audio there.
Oh, you guys can't hear that?
No, I don't think so. I didn't hear.
Okay.
Can you please play again and see?
You want me to play it again? Yeah, and see? Yeah. Make sure the volume's up. Looks like the volume's good. Anything there? You know what? Maybe it might be because
Oh, it's in your headphone.
it's in my earphones. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I should take the earphones out.
Yes, if you disconnect the Bluetooth.
Yeah. Try that.
Sorry about that, buddy.
That's all right. No, my fault. I will turn Bluetooth off.
And make total sense.
See if that works here. Not bad.
But it was funny, you enjoying like, it's okay, it's working, because you are listening here.
All right, let's see if this works better. Let me know if you can hear this one now.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us about your goals?
Yes, my name is Pat Fitzgerald. I'm 51 years old. As far as my goals go, right before the New Year's, my friends and I figured out that it would be a good idea to try to set a goal to lose some weight. And with one of my friends getting married in June, we all started weekly weigh-ins. I started out at 252 pounds, and my goal is 220 pounds by June 1st.
All right. So again, now that we've met Pat, we're going to take him through this entire framework for coaching behavior change. All right. And we're going to help him to alter his behaviors in order to reach that goal that he just talked about of losing weight. Now, one of the biggest lessons that I have learned in the last couple years is that we need to start with the elephant. All right. Again, we talked about the elephant, our emotional brain, being responsible for 95% of our behaviors. Okay, the mistake that I made in the past is, and I think that a lot of people make, is they try to start by directing the rider, their rational brain, right? And we do that by telling people information. I would give people articles and tell them about good books to read, and further try to convince them of why it was a good idea for them to make their change. Okay, but again, knowing that the elephant is really in control of the situation, we're going to start there first. Okay, so to do that, we first have to figure out what's going to motivate Pat to make this change.
So you've kind of answered some of this, but what else is motivating you to accomplish this goal?
So I've got a few goals. At the top of the list is definitely my responsibilities as a father and as a husband. To be healthy, to stay alive for my family, not to be a burden. That's definitely something that is important to me. I play basketball also, recreationally. And as much as that might seem a little silly, that I'd want to train for a recreational sport, I like to be as good as I can be. I'm competitive. Our vacations, we like to go out to the national parks, hiking, and just walking great distances to try to be as alone as possible in the wilderness. And again, it helps to be in really good shape, particularly when a lot of these parks are at high altitudes. But really what it comes down to is I like to feel good. I like to fit my clothes. And if I can use this contest, this goal of losing weight, where camaraderie, having someone to do it with, which is so important. If I can do that, then I'm absolutely going to do that.
All right. So again, Pat, there's a lot motivating Pat to lose weight here, right? He talks about externally, some of the things externally motivating him to reach this goal is the pickup basketball he plays with his friends, right? He talks about he's a competitive guy. The weight loss challenge with his friends is very competitive. He's very competitive when he plays basketball. He's also externally motivated by the family vacations he goes on, right? He talked about hiking and wanting to lose weight to be in better shape in order to have a better time on those vacations. He also talked about things internally that are motivating him, okay? First thing he mentioned right off the bat was his family, right? He wants to be healthy and able to be a good father for his wife and his son, and be able to take care of the people that he loves. He also talked about that general feeling, right? The feeling of, how he fits into his clothes and the feeling of being healthy on a day-to-day basis, having more energy. All those things are going to be motivating him to make his change. Now, these are all really good reasons for Pat to again, reach his goal and to make his change. Now, it's our job as his coach, to figure out how can we harness these things motivating Pat, and how can we use him to steer him towards a behavior change. To do that, it's really important that we have to understand systems are going to be much greater than motivation. Okay, motivation is great to get things started, get the process started, get the wheels spinning. But systems are what's going to keep everything going once it's already started. Okay, so we need to figure out a way to create a system that's going to work regardless of Pat's level of motivation. This is important because all of our athletes and our clients are going to start out motivated at the very beginning. Okay, but again, when things take a long time, we can't count on motivation being that high day in and day out. So we need to create a system where it's going to be easy for Pat to do the type of behaviors he needs to do on his worst day as opposed to his best day. And to do that, we're going to shape the path. All right, we're going to create an environment in which it's easy and convenient for Pat to do the type of behaviors that he needs to do. But first, we have to figure out what type of obstacles are in Pat's path.
Where's the one area you feel you struggle with the most?
My Achilles heel is easily late night snacking. Now, it does coincide with the fact that I work that second job and I'm sitting in front of a computer and I'm not moving for a while and I might even be getting bored, so I start eating.
So describe your previous history with diet and exercise. What has or hasn't worked for you in the past?
I was on the South Beach diet about 10 years ago or so, and over the course of 3 months I lost 45 pounds. I went from a 40-inch waist to fitting in snugly, but fitting into 34-inch jeans. and I looked really good, and I was exercising, though not as much as I do now. I kept most of that weight off for a year, and then I put about 20 of it back on. So that's sort of where I was at my 252. That includes that 20 pounds that I put back on. Beyond that, I've tried, low-cal diets. I've tried exercising a lot, but there needs to be a better plan, and there needs to be a better formula, which is really what brought me to Mike Boyles and brought me to Dan McGinley.
All right, so Pat has a lot of obstacles in his path there, right? He told us about him working 2 jobs, so he has very little free time. He's pretty stressed out. He works late, so his sleep is a mess. He sits a lot throughout the day. He doesn't get much activity outside of training at the gym. And he told us about his biggest struggle being the late night snacking that he does when working that second job. Okay, so another mistake that I have made in the past is I would have tried to change all of these things at once. All right, but trying to change everything at once has never worked for my athletes or my clients. It's just too much change for anyone to handle. Okay, again, when we think about that analogy of the rider and the elephant, the rider is really very fragile, right? It takes a lot of energy. So if we overwhelm it with too much information, nothing's going to happen. So instead, we're going to focus on changing one thing at a time. All right, and the one thing we're going to focus on is the thing that we think was going to make the biggest difference here, and that's his late night snacking, right? And we're going to use that existing habit he has of eating late at night and rework it to create a better behavior. And finally, let's talk about how we're going to work to direct Pat's rider, right? Pat needs to eat healthier late night snacks. He knows that. Okay, he just told us so in the video. He has all the information he needs, but now it's our job as his coach to show him how to do it and to create a system that makes it as easy and convenient as possible. To do that, we're going to work to build habits, okay? And this is what they call a habit loop, and it's out of the book, The Power of Habit, again, by Charles Duhigg. So each habit is going to start and be initiated by a cue. A cue is some sort of a stimulus in the environment that's going to kick our brain into an automatic mode of behavior. All right. And in response to that cue, we're going to go through a routine. A routine is going to be some sort of a physical or a mental or even emotional response to whatever stimulus just occurred. And that cue is going to give us some sort of a reward. All right. And when the reward is enough to generate a positive situation or maybe even to decrease a negative situation, that's going to be a prize that tells our brain that this whole habit loop is worth remembering in the future. And that's how a behavior becomes habitual, right? So the cue sparks the routine triggers some sort of reward, and then the brain says, oh, that was a good reward. I'm going to do this. I'm going to repeat this behavior the next time that cue or that stimulus happens again. So Pat's habit loop looks like this, okay? The cue is his late night work, okay? He's working that second job. He told us there, he's bored. He hasn't moved in a while. He's stressed out. He's tired. That's going to be the stimulus that's going to trigger the routine that he goes through. He has the routine right now of getting up, going to the kitchen and getting junk food. And for Pat, this is always a bag of chips and Pepsi. All right. And having this snack gives him the reward of decreasing some of the stress he has that he's feeling at work. Right. He gets to get up from his desk and move around a little bit, so he feels a little bit better. It also decreases some of the anxiety. It takes his mind off of work for a second. It also gives him a little bit of energy to be able to stay up later and finish what he's working on. The negative side of this is that it's led to Pat gaining a bunch of weight, right? And it makes him feel tired and sluggish, and he has no energy to train the next day. So to rework this habit loop, we're going to script Pat's critical move, all right? The cue is going to stay the same. We're not always going to be able to change our athletes or our clients' cues, okay? Again, it's the reality of life for Pat is that he's going to have to work late at night sometimes, and that he's going to feel stressed out. But what we can alter here is the routine. So this time when he gets up from his desk, instead of eating junk food, we're going to replace that with healthier options. And what you see up on the picture on the screen here, it's hard to see, but this was actually a picture that Pat sent to me. He bought a mini refrigerator that he now keeps in his office, and he stores it with a bunch of healthy options. So he's got carrots in there, he's got Greek yogurt, he's got grapes. So again, now it's much more convenient and easy for him. He doesn't even have to leave his office. He can get up from his desk, go into that mini fridge. He still snacks, which is still going to give him the reward of decreasing his anxiety, taking his mind off some of the stress he's feeling. But this new routine of his is going to help him to reach his goal of losing weight. It's going to help him feel healthier. It's going to help build that identity of somebody that eats well. Okay, so it significantly changes the reward he gets. So back to the entire switch framework again in one piece here. And now we're going to look at how we built that back to relate to Pat. Okay, the first thing we did was, again, worked with that giant elephant, the part that's responsible for 95% of our behaviors. We motivated the elephant by finding the feeling that was going to motivate Pat over the long term to make his change. So again, when I was going through this process with Pat, I was always asking him about his basketball, right? I was saying, how'd you feel on the court? And trying to relate his new eating strategies to his energy levels and how he was performing during his sport. We also related it back to his main feeling of being a father and a husband and being someone who's going to be able to be healthy and take care of his loved ones, right? So I would say, during times when Pat was struggling, I'd say to him, just think about your wife, think about your son, think about you being healthy and being able to take care of them for a long period of time. Okay, next we work to shape the path by creating an environment in which it'd be very easy and convenient for Pat to do the behaviors that he needed to do. Okay, and we did that by building habits. Okay, so Pat already had the habit of eating late at night. We just reworked that habit to change the type of food that he was eating. And again, now he has a new habit where it's going to help lead towards his goal. And finally, we directed his rider by working with that rational side of the brain by scripting the critical move. Okay, he knew that his late night snacking was what was going to hold him back. So we told him exactly what to do, gave him where to go during that critical moment, again, in order to help him reach his goal. And this is a picture of Pat and his wife, Amy, right after he achieved his goal. They were in New York City celebrating her birthday, and somebody took this picture of him, and he sent this to me along with the text that you see up on the right-hand side of the screen. So he got to 219 pounds. And this was a really cool moment, and it was awesome to see that he was able to reach his goal. But what I was really excited about is that throughout this process, Pat was able to shift his mindset and really create an identity of somebody that he loves to train now. He enjoys eating healthy. He enjoys the feeling of waking up every morning with energy and liking the way he looks. And it's because that he's been able to create this new identity and this shift his mindset that he's going to be able to carry this change over with him for a long period of time. It's going to be a sustainable change. So to close this out, I love this quote from Alan Cosgrove. It says, "Psychology beats physiology every single time." So I think it's really important for us as coaches to remember it's not just about physically what happens throughout training in the weight room. right? The mental components are going to be a huge part of the type of success that people are able to achieve. So if we can work to help our clients by directing their rider, by working with the rational brain, motivating the elephant by working with their emotional brain, and shaping their path by helping them create an environment for change, that's going to have a much greater impact on the people we work with. And ultimately, we're going to have more success as a result of that. So thank you guys very much for your time. Thank you for listening again. Thanks to Felix for setting this whole thing up, and Bruno for translating. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to share any of the resources that I have in this presentation, or answer any questions you guys have. My email is up there. Instagram is Dan McGinley 617, and I'm also on Facebook. So feel free to reach out, and I look forward to hearing from you guys.
Very good, Dan. Very good. Excellent. And I love this presentation. As I said before, really, really good tools, really good information there. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dan, if you could share the slides later with me. You already sent to me, right? Yeah, you sent to me, sorry. And you mentioned about some research. I think it is my recommendation. Instead, people start to talk with you and you have to send like 100 emails. Maybe it's better if you send all the research for me. And when I send the PDF for them with your slides, I will add the research. Make sense for you?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, I can. I'm just trying to make your life a little bit easy because I know how busy you are, and
yeah,
just trying to manage the time here. So are you open few minutes here for Q&A? We already have one here. People, if you have questions, please, this is the time. I see another second one bumping here. So from Bruno, what was the most difficult behavior of a client that you managed to change? Very good question.
Very good question. Yeah. So for Pat, for the example that we had in the presentation there, it was that his late night snacking, because that was such an ingrained part of his. It was really a ritual for him. He would do it every single night. And it was something that he knew he needed to change. But again, once something becomes a habit and becomes an automatic behavior, it can be very challenging, both mentally and physically, to rework that, right? It requires a lot of energy and a lot of effort. So that was something that it wasn't, I think I made it seem very easy in that presentation, but this wasn't a completely linear, smooth process either. Pat definitely had setbacks along the way. I mean, there were times when he would go a week or even longer without doing the type of things that we had set out for him to do. And he was really frustrated, but it was cool to see him sort of work through that and ultimately come out, reaching his goal. So
good. Another question here from Christina. Christina is also a CFSC certified coach. How do you deal with clients that want to change but do not have support from their family? Very good question.
Yeah, really good question. That's hard because, again, family is going to be a huge part of the environment, obviously. So I think as coaches, we really just need to focus on doing the best that we can and controlling what we can control. And part of that is creating a really good environment within your setting, within your gym, within your relationship with your athletes and clients, and being the best sort of motivator that you can be. And then also trying to have them, introduce them to like-minded people. I think that's what, we talk about the power of communities. Like CFSC is a community, and part of the reason why it's so powerful is that it's a lot of people that have similar interests and similar ideas who can continually sort of push each other and continue to learn and grow. You can do the same thing with your clients. I think, again, kind of creating a community within the gym of people that are going to support their their behavior change, even if they're not getting the support that maybe we'd hope for at home. Maybe they can get it somewhere else, again, like the weight room.
Good, good. How many time for habits change? Like how many weeks or months do you believe this work will show some difference, some results?
So the majority of the research shows that it's not so much about the length of time as it is the frequency that they do the new behavior. So for instance, if I was trying to change, how healthy I ate, but I only ate healthy once a week over the course of 6 months, that's still not a lot of exposures to that new behavior. But if I ate healthy every single day at every single meal, that's a lot more frequent exposures, and that therefore the changes in the new habit is going to be built a lot faster. So it's not really dependent. It's not time dependent as much as it is frequency dependent.
Good.
So the more frequent you can be, the more consistent you can be, the faster things are going to become ingrained into a habit.
Good. In Brazil, we have the habits to eat too much as a part of the culture, and people have too much hangout moments when we always see a table with a lot of food, a lot of alcohol. Do you have some advice about this situation? How can we manage this situation?
Yeah, it can be tricky when it's a part of the culture, but again, I think creating an environment again is going to be really important. So part of the way you can do that, one thing that we tell people to do a lot of times is sort of predetermine what you're going to do in that situation, so that when the situation happens, you don't have to figure it out in the moment. So for example, if I was going to a party and we knew that there was going to be a ton of food and a ton of drinks, and I was trying to change how much I ate or how much I drank, I might decide beforehand, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Maybe I have a meal before I go to the party, right? And then I get to the party and I can just have a little bit of food, but I've already eaten, so I'm not that hungry. Or maybe, there's ways to do it, like asking for, if you order a big meal at a restaurant, you can ask the waiter to box up half the food beforehand so that you can take it home with you. So now you have a half portion of the meal, right? These are all little tricks and strategies that I've used with clients before, but I think it helps to think of situations before they happen and have a game plan for those, so that in the moment they don't have to rely on their willpower to avoid a situation. They can just follow the path, and again, sort of, it's that critical move, right? We script what they need to do in that situation where they're going to struggle.
Very good. Two other questions here that are very similar. People are asking about a team, like nutritionists, psychologists, doctors. Do you have a team that work with you to achieve the goal?
So we don't at MBSC. It's us as coaches are really responsible. We don't have a team, but I think if you did, that would be obviously a huge positive. I mean, we don't have access to psychologists or nutritionists really, and that's why I've sort of gotten so into this, is that I've tried to figure out ways as a coach, as a strength and conditioning coach, that I could impact all these other areas. So I think the important thing to take away is, even if you don't have a team of professionals like a psychologist and a nutritionist, learning to do the best you can with what you have. As a coach, I think we have a huge ability to impact our athletes and our clients. These, people look up to us, people trust us. So figuring out different ways to increase our impact, like coaching behavior change or like learning about nutrition, learning about psychology. These are all really positive things we can do to have a greater impact on the people that work with us.
Very good. Um, do you guys use some Excel sheet to control the actions, control the results, and track the results?
You can, yeah. That's definitely one good way to do it, because it allows the person to visually see progress, how they're doing. So that example of the athlete recovering from ACL surgery, I use the example of getting a calendar and making big check marks on the calendar. You could do the same thing through an Excel sheet. I think it's really good. Again, some of these changes, it's going to take a long time. So it's easy for the person to, again, they start out really motivated, but as time goes on, motivation starts to wane. If we can give them visual cues and visual indicators of progress, that's going to help keep their motivation steady and help keep them progressing over a long period of time. It's a lot of these apps that we use, things like MyFitnessPal. It will send you a notification if you haven't logged in for a certain amount of days. And again, that's what it's trying to do, is build a habit of you logging in every single day and you checking the box every single day. So again, it works as motivation. It's also really good to work as a habit.
Good. How do you see these change behaviors working for teenagers? We know that teenagers change behaviors all the time. Also, they have mental development process because they don't know yet a lot of decisions to take, and the same person is asking for the other part of the humans beings, like the old clients, very old clients, that they have habits already for a long time.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the biggest thing is understanding. Again, we start with the elephant, the motivation piece. Those two, the ends of the spectrums, are going to have different motivations. The young kids are going to be motivated by, again, very different things than our older clients. But it's just figuring out what's going to be the trigger for each one of those and trying to build off of that. An example, so for a lot of our younger athletes, social media, I think, is a great tool to use to drive motivation. All of our younger athletes are on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, things like this. So giving them public praise. For example, I talked about the athlete recovering from ACL or ACL surgery. We've done this before. It's every time that athlete hits a big milestone in their rehab, we post something about them on Instagram. I would post it on my personal Instagram. I would post it on the Body by Boyle Instagram. Right? The athlete sees that, and now that's motivation. They're like, oh man, all these people are seeing my progress. I'm going to work that much harder towards getting to that goal and to continue to progress the way I want to progress. Right? So it's really positive feedback, and that's what's going to motivate, some young athletes. Maybe for some of the older clients, it's going to be a little bit different. They might not be on social media. They might not, be motivated by the same things. But again, it's just figuring out, okay, what's really motivating for that person, and then trying to use that to drive their whatever type of behaviors they're trying to change.
Good. Do you have some protocol, some patterns protocol that you can adapt for each client?
The tricky thing is, so I think that this framework is somewhat the protocol, just sort of trying to understand this framework, but each client is going to be a little bit different, right? Like the things that I used with Pat aren't necessarily going to work for, again, maybe a younger athlete or, a client with a different set of situations. So I think my best advice is to, again, sort of just dive into this whole concept of behavior change. If you look into some of the resources that I laid out earlier, you can take ideas from all sorts of different fields, you know, some psychology stuff, some nutrition things, some behavior change resources. All these things, I think you can take different ideas and sort of adapt it to both your own setting and the setting of the athlete or the client, because each one is going to be a little bit individual.
Good. What are some behaviors you have had a hard time working on yourself?
For myself, a good example, a big one was sleep. For a long time, I struggled, especially when I went to China with sleep. And I remember it affected everything that I did. I would have groups really early in the morning that I would train, and then I was training clients late at night. And for the longest time, I struggled with sleep, and I was really a shell of myself, I think, for a long period of time because of that. But I used some of these same processes, and this was almost before I started getting into this type of stuff, but I really tried to build a habit of the scripting that critical move. For me, the critical move was right before bed. So I had a bad habit of right before bed, I would check my phone and I'd go on the computer, I'd watch TV. And gradually I started to rework, you know, what I was doing in those situations, where to the point where I switched, you know, looking at my phone to reading a book. I made it a really solid habit of trying to shut off all sorts of screens and things about an hour before bed. And I did things like bought blackout curtains and kept the room really cool. All these things I was reading about in order to help me get better sleep, I started to do. And since then, it's become such a habit that I really do it now without even thinking. And I sleep much better, and overall I feel much better. So I think for me, sleep was probably one of the biggest things that I struggle with to change.
Very good. How do you recommend to manage some possible fail situation during the process of change habits?
Sorry, what recommend changing? Which one?
Now, how do you recommend manage fail situations during the habit changes, the changes habit?
Yeah. So when somebody fails, how do you manage that?
Yeah,
it can be tough. Really, just encouraging people, again, being there as a coach and encouraging people to get back at it. One of the things talk about, it's from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I have in one of those slides. He has the theory of encouraging people to never miss twice, right? Because it's important to understand that we're all going to have bad days and we're all going to fail at some points. But if you can create a mindset and build that identity of somebody that, all right, even if I fail one time, or I don't do my habit or my behavior change on one day, I'm never going to let it slide to 2 days in a row. In having that sort of that mindset and that philosophy, it allows you to make mistakes and allows people to, again, have bad days, which we're all going to have. But it builds in that, it makes sure that never gets out of control and it never slides into developing a bad habit, right? So I think having that mindset and sort of creating that identity of I'm somebody that's consistent, I'm somebody that's never going to miss twice. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's going to really go a long way into keeping people motivated, allowing them to make mistakes, but also allowing them to stay on track and never get too far off of what they're trying to do. And as a coach, holding people accountable and being there to support them. You know, it's never the end of the world if somebody fails, because it's always something they can learn from and get better and grow from.
Good. I cannot read all the questions, but I'm taking pictures here and I will send you later, and you can send an email for them. but let me pick few here. When you start to work with someone and this client just do not show up for, let's say, 2 weeks, and he or she uses many different excuses for you, how do you see to be more efficient on this situation, and how can we back to motivate this person?
It's, you gotta, as
And
coaches, we can
do not
only,
just complain, just to complete here, and do not be someone that is like, oh, this coach is boring me here. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. It can be difficult. It's, as coaches, we can only control so much. So doing things like text messages and emails and consistently trying to stay in contact with our athletes and our clients. This is something we talk about a lot at MBSC, especially with the whole coronavirus situation, is we were always encouraging each other to reach out to our athletes, reach out to our clients, letting them know that, hey, even though we're not training together, we're still thinking about you. We still want you to be doing the things that are going to make you successful. So building those relationships goes a long way into getting people to come back to training if they do fall off the wagon like that, or if they don't show up for a couple of weeks. Being able to reach out and say, I haven't seen you at the gym in a couple of weeks. Is there anything I can do? Is there anything you need help with? And being open, even asking people, hey, did something go wrong? Is there something you don't like about what we're doing from a training standpoint, and that don't like about me as a coach? Sometimes it's just not a good fit too, right? We've had that. We have, Felix, like we've had great coaches at MBSC, but not every client fits with every coach. So there's going to be times when it might just be a personality clash that we may have to change. Say, okay, we're going to switch coaches at some point because it's just a better personality fit. So all these things are options. I think the biggest lesson there is to consistently communicate with people and figure out what's going on. Text messages every week, emails, calls, continuing to check in and keep people accountable, and also let them know that you're thinking about them and that you want to help them in any way you can.
Good. Last one then. Dan, how do you recommend to work with people that suffer from anxiety or food compulsion?
Some situations like that, we have to remember that as coaches, we're not always qualified for something like a food disorder or an eating disorder, rather disordered eating. I would refer out in that situation, because that's really a situation for a psychologist or a nutrition professional. So it's understanding and having a network of people that you can reach out to and refer people to is going to be important. We've had that situation at MBSC before with, for example, one time there was a young athlete who had a disordered eating going on, and we were able to communicate that to her parents, and then from there sort of refer her to a professional who is more qualified to help. So that would be for disordered eating. That's where I would go. For someone with anxiety, training itself is a great thing, can really help anxiety. And also creating some of these positive behaviors can also really help anxiety. Things like getting better sleep and eating better food. These are all things that can help cope with what they have going on. So working through this same behavior change framework would be a great way to help somebody, one of your clients, with a situation like anxiety.
Very good. So my friend, the time is done. Sorry about that. We could be here for one more hour. I love people interacting and asking, and I took some pictures here. I will send an email for you with these questions, and if you could help us, I will send for all these guys here. Thank
Absolutely.